Leah. No, should I call her? No.
You don't have to,
Why?
because, you know.
What? Oh,
I do stuff like that.
not as good as dipped in peanut butter.
I don't like peanut butter.
Good
I know.
evening.
You.
I know.
Not as-
Good evening.
Not as good
I
as
get
peanut
into a
butter.
lot of trouble for that.
Great to see you
In my own
guys.
family.
So, so far, we have Doris and Arona and Lois. It's very good to see your avatars. And here, in our studio audience, we have Jason and David and Liz and Lynn and Hannah.
I feel like the romper room.
The artist-
It is
form
very
of-
much like the romper room. It feels like it
Exactly.
because also you're like looking into the thing
You have
there.
that, what is that thing we had? What was the woman had with the romper room?
She had like a mirror, or so-
Mirror?
but it was, she
Yeah.
could see through it though.
Right.
It was like,
They're magic.
Yeah, thanks for dinner.
No, I don't know what to do with
That's
that
my
one
dinner
too. The guy.
Whatever's
the
left
guy-
over, I'm taking
The
home.
genius.
Oh,
of
oh, you-
Otherwise it'll spoil.
You can take it home.
What about the fish? Yeah.
Gail,
Liz,
Guys?
The doctor gave me an apple. and I still have
how about
one.
you take one, I'll take the other. So we can talk about it.
Isn't this yours?
No, I'm gonna, I might adapt it.
Well, where did it come from then?
I don't know if you noticed, but there's books on the shelves.
hey, Gene.
How are you?
Excellent. It's great to hear your voice, Gene.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, my friend Mordechai Becher, dear friend Mordechai Becher, his son was wounded. He found out about it this morning. He was wounded yesterday, but he is okay. He had he was wounded by shrapnel, but he's okay. And so today is dedicated to a refuah shlema for complete recovery to Pinchas Elio ben Chava Leah, to the speedy return of all the hostages in good health, to the healing of all the wounded, to the comforting to all the bereaved, to the protection of the soldiers and the protection for everybody in the region and for all of us. Abraham is considered the great symbol of chesed, of loving kindness. If you study the mystical level of Torah, this is prominent. Whenever he comes up, he is identified as representing chesed, representing loving kindness, giving. We also, from his experience of the Akedah, we're told that he demonstrated great awe for God. God says to him, now I know you have awe for me, because he offered up his son. So he is representative of awe. We often think about him as the first monotheist. This is not strictly true, but that's how he's often represented, as the first monotheist. I say it's not strictly true because the Torah represents Adam speaking to God and having a relationship with God, Adam and Noah, and even Cain, Cain before him. And we're going to see that there is a Melchizedek, the king of Shalem, seems to be a monotheist. So he doesn't he isn't truly the first monotheist, but he does seem to have been remarkable and rare where he came from. And maybe he was the first monotheist in his town or in his region. But the Midrash does spend time talking about his discovery of the nature of God and his relationship with God. He is considered to be the first Jew or the founding of the Jewish people. Even again, with a caveat, because the Jewish people bound by the Torah is only going to really happen when we leave Egypt, but he is identified as our first patriarch in but for me, what stands out in the stories of Abraham that we read, very last few verses of last Torah portion, and then this Torah portion, the next couple Torah portions, what stands out is his willingness to engage with God, to follow faithfully God's directions, even though he hardly ever knows what's going to happen. It's a remarkable feature of the stories of Abraham that he's told to go to this land, but he's not told where to go to. God says, I'm gonna show you where to go to, but he's not told much about it. When he gets to this land, he's told that there's a famine. God eventually tells him, this is really almost funny. God tells him this is going to be the land that he inherits. When he got there, there was a famine. He couldn't even stay in the land. He had to go to Egypt. This is the land that God is promising him. One day, this will be yours. Imagine if you were taken to like some place that had just been entirely bombed down, and all there are just shells of buildings and stuff like that. And somebody is standing next to you and goes, one day, this will all be yours. There's nothing there but smoldering ruins. But one day, and he is good. He's good with it. He's told he is going to be the father of a great nation, but he can't have children. And his first best option for a couple that are not going to have natural children is his nephew Lot. And most likely, Rabbi Foreman goes through this list, but most likely he's assuming that Lot will inherit him. At least, his nephew will inherit him. But then it becomes clear that he and Lot are not going to work together, and he sends Lot off. So, and then when God tells him this thing about how eventually he's going to be the father of a great nation, he's assuming that it's going to be kind of a surrogate or stepfather, because the only one he can imagine now is Eliezer, his trusted servant, who is going to be his thing. And God says, no, it's not going to be Eliezer. You'll see. but he doesn't tell him how it's happening. It's not like he shows him a picture of it, an image of it, which he could have, but he doesn't. No, he just tells him, don't worry about it. Then in this week's parsha, he's introduced to Hagar through Sarah, the matchmaker, and they have a kid. He has a son. He finally has a son. Well, that's not it. No. It's going to be a son that's going to come from Sarah, and we're going to see in next week's Torah portion that miraculously, impossibly, Sarah is going to have become pregnant with a child, and then they have Yitzchak. And so now it seems absolutely clear what's going to happen. And then at one point he's going to be told, take this kid and sacrifice him to me. This is not just like a moment in the life of Avram. This characterizes the life and the relationship between God and Avram. He is willing, not just willing to follow, but he clearly celebrates and embraces the promise that God makes, even though he is not given any picture, any clue as to how this is going to unfold. My favorite new one this year, I don't know why it never dawned on me, but he's going to be promised the land. It's hysterical. He's promised this land. He just had to go to Egypt because there was a famine in the land. It's not like the spies. When they go into the land, it is just producing giant fruits and everything about the land. It's flowing with milk and honey. But not when Avram goes there. And this is the land that he's promised. And it's like this every step of the way. Every step of the way. And think about it. God is promising in this land, it's completely full of people. It's full of people. No explanation what's going to happen with those people. No explanation. This one day, this is all going to be yours. You had a famine. It's full of people. Here, come let me show you. North, south, east, west. I'm going to take you all over. I'm going to show it to you. At one point in the prophecy, he actually asks, Bama Ada, how will I know? How will I know about the land? How will I know? And suddenly he has this dark prophecy about that the Jewish people are eventually going to go down to it doesn't say Jewish people, his descendants are going to go to a foreign land, and they're going to suffer there, but God's going to take them out and with great wealth, and then they're going to come back. And the Midrash says that the reason for the dark prophecy that happens is because he asked, how am I going to know? He showed a lack of faith. Honestly, this man, at every step of the way, he is being asked to do things on trust. At each step of the way, it looks impossible. And no explanations given. None. This is going to be yours. You're going to have a big family. He's not even told, when you get to the land, he's not even told, I'm going to take care of you. Yaakov, I would say he is told he's going to be blessed. He told he's going to be blessed. But he isn't told even when he enters into what appear to be difficult situations, is not given directions on how to resolve it. He has to sort of fend for himself and work it out. So there is a principle. This is a principle mentioned in rabbinic writing in the Gemara, Midrash, Ma'aseh avot siman labanim, Ma'aseh avot siman labanim, which Nachmanides explains means something like whatever eventually happens to the offspring, to the children, finds its root in the events that happened to the patriarchs. So they experience their life in a microcosm is what eventually is the experience of the Jewish people in the macro.
What's that saying?
Ma'aseh avot siman labanim. The actions of the fathers or the doings of the fathers are assigned to the children. But the way Nachmanides explains it, so is that whatever, if you want to, if the Jewish people have gone through some dramatic moment, look back to the patriarchs, you'll find it in the patriarchs. So for instance, the Jewish people eventually go down to Egypt and suffer and then come out with great wealth. Avram ends up going to Egypt. There is suffering and he comes out with great wealth. That's just one example. And this is true with Yitzchak and Yaakov as well, that if you look at their lives, so if you want to understand what is happening in our lives today, we could look back. There's a kind of promise in that teaching. Myself, a similar bottom. There's a kind of promise that that you'll find it. There'll be something there. Look there and you'll find it. There's something, it's almost like the DNA of what eventually is the Jewish people. And if you want to understand why we look the way we do, study the genes. It's all in the genes. And so somehow they are the genetic beginning of the Jewish people. And Avram, since he is the first patriarch, it really is expected to all be there somewhere in the life of Avram. So I am going to suggest that might be why this issue of all the issues that are available to talk about in Lech Lecha, this is why I'm talking about this. It's because if he just step by step exemplifies the life of trust and faith that we're expected to be living. This is one of my 3 subjects. But we're always surprised when we don't know. We're like always shocked by it. Like we'll say, I don't know. I don't know how to figure this out. What's going on? What's God's plan? I just don't know. And we talk about it with each other as if this is a shocking new development. That suddenly, up until now, it's all been clear. Up until now, it's all been clear. And we've always been sort of clued in on what the big picture is. But now, for some reason, I don't know. I don't understand what God's planning. I don't know how this whole thing is supposed to work out. I look here, I look there, I don't see the solution. And we're troubled by it, again, as if something's broken. Something's broken. It never was like this before. Everything was functioning, but now suddenly something's broken. I don't know what's going to happen. That's how I feel. I'm looking around and I don't know how this whole thing, this terrible, terrible thing, is going to get resolved. And to me, it's just the way I experience it, it's as if this is the first time that's ever happened, and that it's unexpected, and certainly is in conflict with our notion of God running the world. Because after all, if God is running the world and he cares about us and he's promised us all these things, then certainly this should not be happening, because this does not make sense. Nothing has ever made sense. Nothing's ever, we've never been clued in. Why do we think we were clued in? What is it? Now, I have begun to recognize this voice. I have several voices that over the years I've gotten, I think of them as voices. Some people could call them, like personalities, aspects of my I. I've come to recognize them to some degree. And there is this aspect of myself that thinks it's me. It really does think it's me. And it lives like it's me. And it sort of takes over and interacts with other people as if it's me, this aspect of myself. And it goes about it. The thing is, though, it is blissfully ignorant. It's not just blissfully ignorant about these kind of things. It's blissfully ignorant. First, if you would ask that aspect of me that I even think is me a lot of times, that's how good it is, that operates as me in the world. If you would ask it a question like, you need to breathe, right? Yes. How does that work? It's completely clueless. It could say a little bit of something it learned in 6th grade or 8th grade. And maybe there was a refresher course, freshman biology. It could tell you a little bit about the lungs and the heart and the blood and stuff like that, but it doesn't know very much. It doesn't have any idea what the heart's doing when the heart's doing it. It has no idea because it just doesn't even know my body. It's not that it doesn't. Ask it, that aspect of myself about the soul. Does it know anything about the soul? No. Does it know anything about God? No. Does it know anything about anybody else? Ask it questions about anybody else. I'm calling it for the moment because I'm looking at it from the outside. Every once in a while, you get to look at yourself from the outside. I'm looking at it from the outside. Ask it. This aspect of myself, this being that is this. It's not a being. It's a voice that attempts to represent me in the world. Ask it anything. It doesn't know anything. And then it is shocked when it doesn't know what's going to happen. It doesn't know anything. We don't know very much. We hardly know anything, but we're always astonished when we don't know. If somebody will ask a question and another person doesn't have the answer, something's wrong. This person is a fraud. They represent themselves as a historian, but they don't know. They represent themselves as a rabbi, but they don't know. They represent themselves as a mystic, but they don't know. How is that possible? They must be a fraud. The assumption that we're supposed to know everything, but we don't know anything. We don't know anything. We hardly know anything. And even in our story of Abraham, who people would put on the list of the greatest of all time, not just greatest Jews of all time. I think people would put Abraham, a lot of people would put Abraham on a list of the greatest people of all time. He doesn't ever know. He doesn't know. One time he asked, and according to the Medrash, he even gets punished for that. He doesn't know. Not only does it, and it seems to be okay. It seems to be okay. It's the shock. It's the shock of not knowing. Like, how could it be that we don't know what's going to happen next? Something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. We never know what's going to happen next. We're born into the world and grow up. And at some point, I don't know who told me first, but we're all told at some point that we're going to die. We're going to die. Nobody didn't die. Well, I don't know. Eliyahu didn't die, and possibly Elvis. But otherwise, we're all going to die. That's what we're told. When will it happen?
In due time.
We don't know. And we come to accept that. Is there anything that would matter more than finding that out? But we're like, at some point, we just accept the notion. No, this issue, which is existentially amongst the most important, some would say the most important questions that we have. But at some point, we're totally cool with that idea that we're not supposed to know, we're not going to know. And we live like that. At any minute, that could change. And at some point, we come cool with that. But not knowing what Israel's going to do in Gaza or how it's going to work out in Gaza, that is unacceptable. How is it going to play out? I don't know. And if you say, I trust in God, then you're just an idiot. That's what everybody thinks. You're just a fanatic idiot, because that's just not the way things work. It's the only way it works. There is no other way with anything. Any next step about anything requires that, because we don't know. We don't know about it. It's not an astonishing feature of some weird convergence of events. It's how it always is. Look at that story of Avram. At any step, is there anybody greater than Avraham? Not many. And he, at each step of the thing, doesn't know what's going to happen next. Do you know why? Because we don't know. He is the microcosm out of which the macrocosm is built. Look at what it looked like for him. Ask the Jewish people in the desert, when's the next time you're going to be going? Do not know. How are you going to tell? See that cloud over there? There's a cloud.
And when the cloud goes,
That cloud is going to move, and then we're going to move. A trumpet will blow. When will it happen? Absolutely no idea. How long will you be in the desert? No idea. Where's your food coming from tomorrow? Absolutely no idea. How about water? Where's your regular source of water? No idea. Day after day after day after day. And then we make it into the land of Israel. And if you follow, you will see that at every step of the way, there is no vision. There is no picture given. There is no detailed map
nothing.
of how it's going to play out. And they stumble. At some point they ask for a king. That was wrong. It did say in the Torah that at some point you're going to ask for a king. Is this the right time to ask for a king? Not the right time to ask for a king. They ask for a king, wrong time to ask for a king. If you look through, you'll see it's always dipping your toe in the water. And if you're blamed for anything, it's not dipping your toe properly. It's not that you're, but in other words, there's a mode that you're expected to have. Yes, trust God is a huge part of it. Just have trust in God, and there might be an appropriate time to say, should I do this? Should I not do this? Sometimes you'll be scolded because you shouldn't have asked. Moshe is scolded about, when it comes to crossing the sea. Ma titzak elai. Why are you crying out to me? Why are you yelling to me? Just cross it. It is almost every step of the way the record of the Torah, that you're not going to know what comes next. So when we don't know what's going to come next, and we enter crisis, I blame it on that voice, my guy, who takes over and pretends to be me. I say pretends to be me because there's again, that voice, which some people might call the ego, I don't know, but whatever it is, that I, that seems to represent me, that takes over in these moments. That I is not always me. It's not always there. And when it's not there, I find a deeper sense of experience than when it's there. It's actually necessary. It's sort of like what's the word for it? It's like RAM. It's like I know that's random access memory, but it's it's operating system or
Central
something like that.
processing unit.
Yeah, maybe the central processing. It's what it helps me manage myself, and I get that, and it's very important. But there are people who describe, let's say, Jill Bolte Taylor when she's talking about her stroke. She has that fantastic TED talk. I think it's if you do Jill Bolte Taylor and
It's a good book.
stroke, yeah, she wrote
Yeah.
a book, and then she has like a 20-minute TED talk and her 15-minute TED talk, which is fantastic. But anyway, she talks about the left side of her brain sort of shutting down, and that voice goes. It just goes, and then she's experiencing life without that voice, and it was quite delicious. The experience of life without that voice. The problem is you can't continue to function well if you don't have that other voice, because that voice is very good for it. But you get to see what I'm calling it a voice, or that other aspect of me, because it's not always present. And when it's not active and it's not always present, and I'm able to sort of live in a different place where my eye sees the world from this other place, suddenly I'm in a different world, connected to all sorts of things that I'm not aware of when that other voice is active, that very often I listen to audio stuff from Ram Dass, Richard Alpert. And he has this model that he sometimes uses when he's trying to talk to people about something like this. It's not exactly like this, but he uses this model where he said, imagine that you have this tuner, like the old radios that had like a tuner dial. So you have this dial, the tuner dial, and you can tune it to different channels. Like on a radio, you're going through different channels, different wavelengths. This is just his model of what the different wavelengths would be. It's not necessarily always consistent with the Jewish model, but he suggests that if you turn to, let's say, channel 1, so channel 1, you see everything as physical and material. So when you look out, you see bodies. And you might see the actions of those bodies, and you might see what they do. So if I'm interacting with you, I know what you look like, I know your name, I know what your work is, what you do as your work. That's channel 1, let's say. Channel 2, in his thing, this is, you're moving to the next station. The next wavelength might be things like desire, greed, motivational desires, lust, greed, honor, all these kinds of things, anger, certain like emotions and desires and things like that. That would be channel 2. So I interact with people based on that. Power. I want to move up in the business, and I want to move you by, and it's all about power. What motivates him? Greed. He's motivated by greed, and that kind of world. Then I dial it up to another station. The next station is maybe psychological and also a bit, like emotional. So it might be, in that world, I might characterize myself as a trauma victim. I see myself as a trauma victim. I very much see myself in that world of psychology and emotions. There are people who categorize your psychological type. You're an NSQTZ or something like that. And they've got all these systems for organizing people based on their psychological way in the world. And that's, let's say, it might be station 3. Then he has station 4. In station 4, everybody's an astrological sign. You're a Leo, he's a Aquarius, he's a this, he's a that. And everybody is a function of these energies that happen to be present at the time that people were born, and that impacts them. And that's how they relate to everybody. Oh, you're a Leo. That's why I think we'll be friends, because you're a Leo, or you're a this, or you're a that. And they're interacting, let's say, on that one. And then you knock it up. You're now at a different wavelength, at a different station. And at this wavelength, at this station, you're now at a place that some people might call this a soul level. So you might look in the eyes of another person and you recognize that behind those eyes, at some point, there's a soul, a being, an entity, right? And you may even look in his words, it's like, hey, what are you doing in there? And it's like, how did you get in there? I'm in here. And you're just like souls talking to each other, different like souls talking to each other, interacting with each other. And then, he's got higher stations than that, where at this point, I would add, maybe you're at the next stage, you recognize the divine nature in the soul, and your divine nature interacts with the divine nature of that soul. In other words, there at various levels, and these are contexts, these are places where you're seeing the world. These are different wavelengths. You could be on these different wavelengths. He suggests that you're really on all these wavelengths, maybe, and that during his psychedelic drug experiences, especially with mushrooms from Mexico and certain and LSD afterwards, this was part of his experience, part of what he recognized, because he was living at the world that might have been on channels 1, 2, and 3, and he thought that was the whole world. And what was shocking to him was that when he had these experiences, he saw that this is not the whole world. There's all sorts of wavelengths, and these wavelengths are going, and he was sort of pushed into these other wavelengths and got to see them from the place he was, and he realized that there's all different places, there's all different perspectives. I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing as what he was describing, but if you read, again, I'm making it very clear, he was an example of both, but you'll see, like when Arya Kaplan talks about the different levels of the soul, there's something called nefesh, which is the material layer. There's something called ruach, which is an emotional place. Then there's something called neshama, which is a higher place, maybe connected to the intellect. Then there's something called the chaya, and there's something called the yechida. And these are levels of soul. And he suggests that there are different times when we are looking at the world from these different places. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm looking at the world, let's say, from nefesh. Every once in a while, I see the world from ruach. Sometimes I see the world, who knows, maybe rare people see the world from neshama, and etc. And when you see the world from these places, it's like, it's completely different than when you saw the world at these other places. Each time, it's these new layers they're not just a few added details, it's a completely different perspective. what I was calling that voice, maybe some people call it the ego or something, that voice that occupies me and speaks on my behalf. Sometimes in rabbinic literature, they'll call it the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, or sometimes there's different terms, and it may not always be, you don't want to get too stuck on it
Good
always
guy
being
here and the bad
something.
guy here.
Right, that kind of thing. You could have sort of that. But whatever it is, whatever I'm seeing, whatever place I'm in, this is the most likely problem. When I get to that place and I'm going, I can't see what's going on. I want to suggest that the frustration is actually a deep frustration. It's a deep frustration. It's not ridiculous. There is a deep sense that there's a way of seeing this that is higher. But I am stuck in some low place and I'm not seeing it. But that there is a, if I can get to a different station, there is a way to see this. So I can get to a different frequency. I'm going to be able to see something here. And it's gonna, and I need to see more. I'm not seeing a lot. When I go into fear mode, and especially when I'm in fear or depressed, I have been depressed for 2 weeks. I am trying to get out of it. I don't want it, but apparently I do because I'm holding on to it for some weird reason. But I've been depressed the last couple of weeks, and from this place, it is such a narrow place to see the world. Depression is called narrow. Min hametzar karatika. From the narrows, I call out to God. Those narrows are depression. Depression, anger, these are places that are so narrow. They're so tunnel vision. You see so little. Who takes over for me when I'm in those positions? Mr. Idiot, the RAM, my processor. It thinks it takes over. Don't worry, I know what to do. I know what to do. We're gonna eat chocolate all day. That's what we're gonna do. I know what to do. Somebody get me a pack of cigarettes. That's what we're gonna do. That's all it knows. That's all it knows. It doesn't know. It doesn't see. It's in charge of such a narrow tunnel vision. It doesn't see. It doesn't see. And I am not seeing. But there is a part of me, that does. Rochalea says, so true about chocolate. But and let me just show you that everybody here is just, there she goes. Liz is having the chocolate. Okay, but there's a part of us that it's really the surprise that we don't see. There's a holy part to that surprise, because there are perspectives. Maybe we don't see everything. We don't have God's view on our many wavelengths. Maybe you can get to the place where you get God's view. It does seem like the prophets are getting something like that. And there's a frustration that I'm stuck in this low view. And part of it is completely understandable and acceptable, because we went through this traumatic experience, and it's, just sort of hanging there, and it's hard to wait, and it's hard for the hanging stuff to happen, and it's confusing and painful, and there's all different kind of stuff going on, and who's right. If we get what we want, then other people are going to suffer, and all this kind of stuff's going on. It's very confusing, but part of it is part of the frustration is because we're in this place. We only have tunnel vision. There are higher places. One of the keys to getting to the higher places, no, it is promised in this life. You can get in this life. There are prophets in this life. But do you know how you get prophecy? One of the rules? Yeah. It only rests on people that have simcha. Simcha, Moshe Shapiro, blessed memory, said, simcha is a sense of expansion. Depression is narrow, and simcha is expansion. On the holidays, you are meant to live in simcha, and this simcha is, he said, expanded consciousness. That's the actual word he used. He said, "Banglit korim lazeh," expanded consciousness. In English, they call it that. Now, I don't think he was talking about the LSD experience, but he was suggesting that connected to that feeling of joy was also an opportunity for enlightenment. And in that space, there is a chance to see more. It's not a guarantee that you're going to know the answer to everything that's in front of you, but you can see farther. You can see deeper. There are places, it says, Bikesh Yaakov wanted to reveal the end of days to his children, and then it was closed off. But he saw it. They say Daniel, in the book of Daniel, are hidden clues to when Mashiach's going to come. But then it was present there, and it got hidden. The notion that there are people that could, it even says, Ezehu Chocham Aroes Anolad, who is a wise person, one who can see what will be born of his actions. You may not be able to see it with a picture, but you can see, you can extrapolate, you can tell what's going to happen. And a Navi, the way they test a Navi is to ask him what's going to happen in the future. Not knowing what's going to happen next is not a predicament we have to be in. It is the predicament of the place we occupy. And if we insist on staying in this lowest rung, which I have been staying in, if we insist on staying there, it's not surprising that we can't see beyond it. I'm not promising that you will see the future. I'm not promising it. I'm just saying there are ways we do, but it's not available on this wavelength. On the wavelength of anger, on the wavelength of depression, on that wavelength, it's not available. What's available on that wavelength is narrow tunnel vision. That frustration that we have, that we don't see the answers. I mean, it is funny that we think we ever see answers. Okay, that is funny. That somehow we know what's going to happen in the future. But it's also not funny because there are ways that we sometimes do. Through wisdom, you can see. You can't see with 100% guaranteed accuracy, but you can see a lot of likely outcomes, etc. And with prophecy, we're told you could even see with a much higher degree of certainty. There are levels, there are ways to know. There is a holy itch. It is a holy problem that I can't see. It's both ridiculous and holy at the same time. It's ridiculous that I ever think at this level that I ever know anything, which I don't. And then it's also, but it's also holy because there are other perspectives that we can occupy. That is what we're told. That's what we're promised. And every once in a while, we get a glimpse of the world from those places where things start to make sense and feel completely interconnected. And I feel at peace. Though that view is also possible. And every once in a while, I get it. There are those who claim to live there more than just for a second, that are able to live at this place. Everything's interconnected. There's joy and peace at this level. And you know it exists right now, right here. It's possible. It's right there, and I'm down here. But right up there, it is possible if I let myself go there. The reason I don't go there, I don't want to. I stubbornly am holding on to being depressed. I'm just holding on to it. I've seen it. I could let go. I've seen it myself almost let go and then just grab it right back in. And the same thing with anger and all the other kinds of things that are going on. I see myself drifting away. And then there's this part of me that's going, no, you'll be abandoning what you believe in. You know, the people need you to what? What do they need me? To walk around depressed? Why do they need me to walk around depressed? They don't need that from me. The hostages do not need me to be living with anger and depression because somehow I'm in sympathy with them. No, they need me to care about them, to be mindful about them, to pray for them. And if I could do anything, to work for them to get out. That's what they need from me. They do not need for me to be in this stupor that I'm in, 24 hours a day watching one cable channel and another one, reading one newspaper and another one, doing all these kinds of things. And so I could be there. That is the dumb level of human existence. It is the narrow place of human existence. And somehow from that place, I want to find all the answers. I'm not going to find them in that place. If I can let go of that place, and I can allow myself to possibly inhabit those other aspects of my soul, those other wavelengths, to see things from higher places, I do have a chance to at least see the interconnectivity of everything. Because that I have witnessed, that you have witnessed. Every one of us has had that moment at some point where it just all came together. It could be walking in a garden. It could be just sitting outside. It could be in a conversation with a friend. It could be whatever, wherever it was, that moment, you got a glimpse of that moment. You were like Ram Dass when he ingested mushrooms from Mexico. You got to zip up to this place and you got to see that. That may not be the highest place even available, but you got to see that. And that's available today. There are people that could see it, that are able to see how everybody's connected, how everything in creation's connected, and feel the joy of the connection and the peace in the connection that is here and available today. But, and it comes in here, inside. And I have to, go up those levels inside, but I have to let go. I have to let go of the depression. I have to let go of the anger. I have to let go of that. I know. You see it sometimes, and inside somehow it's like it's like when somebody tells somebody who's been mourning too long, and they say you got to move on, and the person doesn't even. It's like at first the person doesn't know what you mean, but at some point they sort of do, right? And I sort of do, and I see it, but I don't want it. I'm not ready to do it, but I see it. And I see myself just letting it go a little bit, then grasping right back onto it. Letting it go a little bit, grasping right back onto it. At some point, if I'm willing to let that go, and then I can move, especially simcha. I know it's ridiculous to think it right now, but simcha as a mode of getting to these higher places where that nudge, that push, that urge to see more can be realized. Ultimately, I don't think what I need is to know all the answers about what's going to happen, but I at least need a little glimpse of how we're all connected, how everything is connected, and to feel the joy of that. At least there, I feel like I need to get to. I want to get to feel the release of this narrow place. So that's that. All right. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And I'm very grateful for learning together.
Next week's Halloween.
Oh, darn. Will this involve
I
David
can-
Bergen's going to have to bring candy for all of us.
It's my daughter's birthday. I might not be.
Excuses. Okay. Be well, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Karsh.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.